How you doing there? Welcome back to Babble on Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Nun Ches, Daf 58. I'm Masechet Avodah Zarah, friends. Woo! How's everybody doing? Sheesh, Yein Nesech. It's a whole thing, huh? So, on today's Daf, basically, be'etzem, we are going to be classifying Yein Nesech. We're going to be classifying Yein Nesech. We're basically going to have three main scenarios where there's wine, there's an Ovid Kochavim, and there's some kind of shidduch, and we have to figure out what exactly was the nature of the shidduch and what are the ramifications of that shidduch. Now, Chaver, before we jump in, I want to once again bring up the slide with the lots of moving pieces again, so that all of the moving pieces, all the things are top of mind. And I'm sure that there are things that I'm missing. It's a pretty complex and detailed sugya. And I think, as I've said in the past, today we're going to have three scenarios. And as I've said in the past, there's lots of different scenarios, and sometimes it can be difficult today, right away. We're in the first scenario today already. We're going to see how it can be difficult to quite get that classification right. But anyways, lots of moving pieces. How did he touch it? With his hands, with his feet, with his stick? Was he holding a vessel? What was his intention? Was it a complete fluke? Did he intend to touch it but not to libe it? Did he intend to libe it? Could it be like Reb Shimon who says mutter? Like in certain scenarios, could it be like the Chacham who say, the more stringent, also bano, also b'shtia, mutter bano. I don't know, maybe I can get rid of that one. But the point is, it's all part of the discussion. How also is it to sell, only to drink? All of it, just the yenesech. What's this? Is it yenesech? Is it stanyenom? How mutter is it completely only to sell? Okay. I think that the main things, probably the main ones to keep in mind. All right, is he touching it directly, or is he using some kind of a proxy? And what was his intention? Was it a complete fluke? Did he intend to touch it but not to libe it? Did he intend dafka to libe it? And then the outcome of, is it completely usher? Is it only usher b'shasiyah b'mutar bano? Is it completely mutar, even mutar bano? Even mutar b'shasiyah? So those are kind of the main things. Did he touch it directly or not? What was the intention and what's the outcome? Okay, fine. Okay, scenario number one. We're going to start in Daf Nun Zayin Amud Beis, about 5-10 lines. I'd say closer to 10 lines from the bottom. What is it? 2, 4, 6, 8 lines from the bottom. How uvda da'avu b'machoza. Oh, okay. There was a scenario that once happened in Machoza. Machoza is where Raveh was the murder asra. Also, Ovid Kochavim ayul lechanusa di Yisrael. And Ovid Kochavim went into a Jewish store where either they sold one or they had one, whatever it is. Ovid Kochavim went into a Jewish-owned store. And he says to the Jewish shopkeepers, Istuchu zabune, do you have wine to sell me? Amulei, lo. They said to him in Yiddish, Nein. They said to him, or I guess in Hebrew they said, no. However, in fact, there was wine in a bucket. So the Ovid Kochavim went up to the bucket. Now remember, he had said, do you have any wine? They said, no. He identifies what looks like wine in a bucket. He goes there and sticks his hand in there and moves it around. You see, I think that this is a tricky scenario, Chaver. This is a tricky scenario. I wonder. I think that the shich thing may be an important thing here, right? Because there was a Rashi on at the end of 2 days ago's daf, right? That said at the top of Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph, right? Also, at the top Rashi and Zayin Amud Aleph, that like moving around wine is an important thing here. It's going to come up like in this whole, I don't even know what to say, this whole quagmire of Yein Nesech. So like in Ovid Kochavim, if he sticks his hand into wine and like moves around his hand with the intention of Yein Nesech, like that could already be like a problem. But over here, he wasn't moving it around his hand for the intention of being nesach, it seems. He says to them, is this not wine? So meaning, it sounds like he's trying to prove a point, right? So it sounds like, so what's happening? We have an overkochom. He sticks his hand directly into the wine, and he moves it around, which I think might be important. Though it's a little bit hard to tell, but I think that might be important. But he's not intending to do yei nesach. He's tending to get upset. He asked for wine. He said we don't have wine. He identifies that there's wine in a bucket. He goes, sticks his hand in the bucket, moves around, and he says, "Is this not yei nesach? Is this not wine? Is this not wine?" And then what happened was, and then the Jewish shopkeeper got annoyed, and he just took the bucket of wine away, and just dumped it into the barrel with the rest of his wine. And he said, "Now, there's no wine here. Get out." So what just happened? So Be'etzim and Oibek Kachovim stuck his hand into wine, moved his hand around. But his intention, so he intentionally touched the wine. So there was kavanas maga. There was not kavanas nisuch. He did not intend to do Avodah Zarah. That wasn't the point here. He was trying to be all upset and everything and throw a tantrum. And then faithfully, the Yid took that wine and threw it back in the rest of the barrel. So now what? So now you have a barrel full of wine that mixed into the wine is some of this other wine that an Ovid Kochavim had intentionally touched, not with the intention of Avodah Zarah, but he touched it and moved his hand around in it. So what's the halacha with the wine? So first of all, before we say what the halacha is, what would you think? He touched it directly with the intention of touching it. So it's not like the scenario at the beginning of the daf yesterday with the guy with the lulav, which Tosfos took away the lulav part. He said so in that case, the Oivik Chom, let's say if we say like Tosfos, so he touched the wine directly, just like here, but over there it was a complete fluke. This is not a complete fluke. He intended to touch the wine. Right? There's complete fluke. There's shelo b'kavana, which is complete fluke. There's kavanas maga, which is what this is. He intended to touch the wine. Then there's kavanas nisuch, which is intended to do avodah zarah. That's not what happened. It was kavanas maga here. Now, yesterday we learned about the Mishnah on Daf Samach Chomid Beis, which says that if a person sticks a measuring stick, and we talked about it 2 days ago as well. If an overkomen sticks a measuring stick into the wine to measure it, so we say the halacha there is also b'shasiyah b'mutar ba'ano. Tosfos had said about that the same would apply if he does it even if he does it with his hand. So he didn't use a measuring stick, but Tosfos and Nun Zayin Amud Aleph says that the same would apply if he used his hand. We also saw the opinion of the Chachamim at the top of Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. This was all from 2 days ago, where the Chacham had said, "Maddo bein b'yad bein b'regel yimacher, mutar b'shasiyah, also b'shasiyah b'mutar ba'ano." So before we get into what the halacha is, I would think that in this case, this is a scenario of there was kavanas maga, not kavanas nisuch. I would think that it should be also b'shasiyah mutar ba'ano. So now, Shari Rava l'zabune, which is exactly what Rava said. Rava said, also b'shasiyah mutar ba'ano. So Shari Rava l'zabune l'ovdei kocham. Sure, you could sell it to ovdei kocham. However, if the Gale Rav Huna bar Chinna, Rav Huna b'der Rav Nachman, but Rav Huna bar Chinna and Rav Huna b'der Rav Nachman disagreed with Rava. They said, no, it's osur even to sell it, completely osur. Also b'shasiyah certainly, and even also ba'ano. You can't sell it. Nafke shipur de Rava v'sharu. Now the mouthpieces of Rava went out and they said mutar to sell. V'sharu nafke v'sharu. V'nafke shipur de Rav Huna bar Chinna. Excuse me, Rav Huna bar Rav Nachman v'aser. And the mouthpieces, the shipur. I think shipur is like the shofar, the announcers, the hear ye people of Rav Huna bar Chinna and Rav Huna bar Rav Nachman went and said, completely asur. You can't even sell this wine. And it seems that they are right. which is what's a little bit confusing to me, is that they seem to be right. And I'm still not totally clear on why they seem to be right. Now, Ikla, but we're not done. This continues. Ikla Rav Huna breder of Nachman, the Machoza. Now, Rav Huna breder of Nachman comes to Machoza. Here's the showdown. You see, Rav Huna breder of Nachman and Rav Huna bar China, they were not in Machoza. So while they disagreed with Rava, they weren't there to talk it out and discuss it. But now, Rav Huna breder of Nachman comes to Machoza and he wants to discuss this issue with Rava. Amalei Rava, Rav Elyokim Shamoi. Rava says to Rav Elyokim, his attendant, trike, gale, lock up the doors, the lo nesu inshe, the nitrid. I don't want anybody to come here and bother me. He didn't want to discuss it with Rav Huna breder of Nachman. Tosfos Taka points out something. Tosfos has a little bit as a slightly different girsa here about what exactly the story was. One of the reasons why is he says Rav Odvar Tema about 10 lines before it starts getting wide in Tosfos. I'll just read it out regalachas. V'odvar Temu sheyomar Rava trogali shelo yava Rav Huna achoylek all of this vakei achimo ki aval pisha chazabo mikol makom ayer lo l'shmoya ma'yomar. Why would Rava not want to hear what Rav Huna breder of Nachman has to say? But anyways, so now by the way. So as Tosfos just reminded me of an important note. So as I said a minute ago, it seems like the halacha is like Rav Huna breder of Nachman, that it's also even to sell this wine. You can't get any benefit from it. And as we're going to see, there was an encounter with Rava and Abaye. Abaye be'etzim convinced Rava that this wine is in fact also like Rav Huna bar China and Rav Huna breder of Nachman said. So by the time Rav Huna breder of Nachman had come to visit Rava in Machoza, Rava had already changed his mind. He had agreed already with Rav Huna breder of Nachman that the wine is also even ba'ano. Can't even sell it. So at that point, he had already agreed with Rav Huna breder of Nachman. Rav Huna breder of Nachman came to town. Rava tells his attendant, lock the door. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I don't want to deal with this. I already changed my mind. I already agree. Yes, it's also ba'ano. Lock the doors. Don't let in Rav Huna breder. Don't let anybody in. Now the thing is, Rav Elyokim, Rava's attendant, so he locked the doors, but he didn't. He surely figured that this ban, this wanting quiet to peace and quiet, I could use some peace and quiet. Last night, Mamish in the park over here, Mamish, there was like the biggest party you've ever seen in your life going on until 3, 4 in the morning. It's absolutely nuts. Mamish. It's nuts on several levels. Akoponim, I digress. So where are we? So Rabbi Yochum figured that this decision did not apply to Rav Huna breder of Nachman, surely. So Rav Huna breder of Nachman got through, and he comes into Rava Omerle ki agad namai, and Rav Huna breder of Nachman says to Rava, "No. So, what's the halacha in this scenario when the Ovei Kochavim puts his hand in the wine and gets throws a fit and a tantrum?" So, Amalei Osar Afilu Bano, Rava says, the halacha is Osar Afilu Bano. And Rav Huna breder of Nachman was a little surprised because he was ready for a confrontation. He thought that wasn't Rava the one who said that Mutter Bano? But didn't you say that in this scenario it doesn't make you nesach? I wonder if this shiksheich thing though is an important point though. So he says shiksheich. He's dafka highlighting shiksheich. I feel like Rashi and Tosfos didn't really highlight this shiksheich thing, but I feel like that might be an important thing. That when it comes to shiksheich, it says dafka shiksheich. So meaning, if we take, for example, the scenario of measuring the wine, there isn't necessarily a shiksheich that you put your hand in to see how high it goes, and then you take it out, right? So yeah, I think maybe the fact that it was shiksheich, even though it was only maga, right? There was kavanas maga, there wasn't kavanas nisuch, but maybe that makes it more stringent. Why it's also even afil bano? Wow. So eno say yenesach. Don't you say that there's no yenesach? So emer da amri ono levar mi demei da uchamer. To which Rava says, when I said that it was mutter ba'ano, what I meant that you could sell it. What I meant was you could sell the wine minus the value of the Yenesech. Meaning, what happened? This Oved Chomer had come into the store, right? He says, do you have any wine? He said, no, we don't have any wine. But there was wine in the bucket. He went, stuck his hand in the bucket. So that wine is Osir Bano. You can't drink it, you can't sell, you can't do nothing to it. Now, then the Yid went and he dumped that wine into the bigger barrel. So Rava was saying, even though this isn't what he really said initially, but he was saying to Rav Huna, Breder of Nachman, for whatever reason, this is what he said. Again, Tosfos has a different gears on this because he doesn't feel comfortable with a lot of these things. Why did he not want Rav Huna Breder of Nachman to come in? Why is he like getting all weird and lying, or not quite lying, but there's something weird about the way that things are laid out. But anyways, so Rava says, oh yeah, when I said that it's mutter to sell, what I meant is that it's mutter to sell the wine in the barrel, but of course, the value of the Yenesech part, he wouldn't be able to be charging for that as well and benefiting from the part, from the value of the wine that was touched by the Oved Kochov. So again, says Rava to Rav Huna Breder of Nachman, Amor, I'll say that when I say mutter ba'anoyo, that's mutter to sell to an Oved Kochovim, you could sell the barrel, sure, but certainly not the value of that wine that was touched by the Oved Kochovim. Did I ever say that the value of that wine would be mutter to sell? No, the value of that Yenesech would be osir to sell. Omar Rava. Now, says Rava, the Gemara now talks about what led Rava to change his mind and to say that it would be osir to sell. So Amar Rava says, Rava ki asar lepumbedisa, that when I came to Pumbedisa, so Rava was in Machoza. Now he's visiting Abaye in Pumbedisa. Now Rava, I believe, at one point was also, I think after Abaye, maybe Rava was then the Rosh Yeshiva in Pumbedisa. But anyways, he came to Pumbedisa. Maybe at that point, Abaye was the Rosh Yeshiva. I don't know. But he went to Pumbedisa, and Akva Nachmani Shmaitzo Masnisa, and Nachmani, Abaye, was challenging Rava on this particular topic from statements of Amoraim, from Abraisa. They're osir to say that the wine would be osir even to sell. Shmaitza, what are the statements of the Amoraim that we are referring to, that Abaye was asking him from? Well, because a similar incident happened in Naidah, and Shmuel had said that osir, and I believe that this is referring to, like Rava was saying, osir to get value from the osir to get payment for the value of that, the amount of the Yenesech. The rest you can get payment for, but not the value of the osir part. But Tveria of osir, Rabbi Yochanan, similarly, there was a scenario like this in Tveria, and Rabbi Yochanan also said that the value of that Yenesech would be osir to sell. Ve'amile, and says Rava, I pushed back on this to Abaye and said, Lefisha Eina B'nei Torah. I pushed back against this to Abaye and I said, well, that's because in Naidah and in Tveria, the people there weren't B'nei Torah, so therefore Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan paskin the Chumrah to be extra stringent, but really that wasn't the halach. So where am I? So B'nei Torah. V'omar li, to which Abaye pushed back to me, what? And you think Mechoza? Everybody is the biggest Charedim over there. Charedim meaning like Yirei Shamayim. But Tveria v'Naidah and B'nei Torah, the Mechoza B'nei Torah. So Abaye says, what? You're saying Tveria and Naidah are no good, but Mechoza, now that's the model city. No, just like they were concerned in Tveria and Naidah, you should be concerned in Mechoza, and you should say, so Abaye pushed back against Rava, and says you should really say that this wine is osir b'ano. Masnisa and the Braisa, the agardimim Oved Kochovim. There was an agardimim Oved Kochovim. Agardimim was some kind of official whose job was to make sure that like people were being fair in the markets and not cheating and deceiving people and like messing around with different weights and being dishonest. So his role was to make sure that the markets were fair. And he was also a broker of sorts. And so, so if this agardmim, made like a hole in a barrel and then put in some kind of a straw and sucked out some of the wine. Or he tasted from a cup of wine and then returned the wine back to the barrel. This was a ma'aseh asru, and they said, Osir. So we want to say, what does it mean, Osir? It means Osir even bano, that you can't even sell the wine. So here we have a scenario of an Ovei Kochavim who touched the wine. Maybe if you can say that there was some kind of a sheikh of sorts. Does Rashi say anything about that? Sheikh? I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't know. But anyways, and we're saying that it is that this wine was then put back in the barrel. We're saying that at least that part of the wine was osir. And we want to say it means osir even by no, you can't sell it. Lo b'shasir. Rava pushes back. No, it means that you can't drink it, but you can sell it. If that's the case, less ne'imacher. Well, if you were allowed to sell it, then it should just say so. Because after all, Ketani Sefer, it says in the Sefer, Choram, a very impulsive individual, of Ikhomshe, Hoshit Yadu L'chavis, who just stuck his hands into a barrel. He thought that there was wine in the barrel. And it turns out that there was wine in there. So it's a complete fluke. So in that case, and we said, also b'shasiyah b'mutar bano. Tufta d'Rava tufta. So meaning in the Sefer, when it says mutar bano, they could sell it. It says yimacher. In the Reisha, when it says osir, it must therefore mean osir even ba'anoya, and therefore it is a kasha tufta d'Rava tufta. So at that point, Rava basically gave in and says, okay, fine, I agree that in this scenario, it's also even ba'anoya. So, and therefore, by the time Rav Huna Breder of Nachman come, he had already it was already after this incident, this encounter with Abaye, and he had already agreed that it would be also even to sell. So to recap, to kind of reflect on this, right? Again, right, we have lots of missing pieces. What do we have here? So again, we have a scenario of this Ovei Kochavim who touches wine directly. It was kavanos maga. It wasn't a complete fluke. It was kavanas maga. It was not kavanas nisuch. I think though maybe what's significant here though is that he moved his hand around. I think that might be an important point. Is the fact that he moved his hand around, because shichshuch, moving your hand around, even though in this particular case he did not, there was no kavanas nisuch, but this is the kind of thing that with kavanas nisuch would mamish make you an eser. So it could be that that's the point why we make a gezerah dafka by shichshuch, even though it was only kavanas maga, and even though we say that, for example, if he did it to measure the wine, we said it would be mutter to sell, but over here there was shichshuch. I think maybe that's why we're saying that it's also even bano. You can't even sell it. Wow. Okay. That was scenario number 1. And now we get up to scenario number 2 out of 3. Rabbi Yochanan ben Arza. I don't know who that is. I don't know if that's just Rabbi Yochanan. I don't know. Rabbi Yochanan ben Arza v'Rabbi Yossi ben Noaroi. Havu yasvu v'kashasu chamer. That sounds nice. Rabbi Yochanan ben Arza, Rabbi Yossi ben Noaroi. They were sitting and drinking wine. That sounds very nice. Also, Ahu Gavra, a certain person walked by. Amrle, and they said to him, to Ashkinon, can you pour us another? Can you top us off? I don't know why they asked somebody else. Why didn't they just pour themselves? Who knows? Maybe they were like reclining, right? They used to like be on couches and stuff. Maybe they were like reclining on couches, and it was, if somebody was passing by, it was easier to just ask them to fill them up. I don't know why. Whatever it is, it sounds like it was a very nice evening or a nice afternoon, or maybe even a nice morning. I think we saw the opinion of Rav Nachman, maybe in Masechta Eruvin possibly, that I think Rav Nachman had said that he needs like a revius of wine in the morning, like just to get going. I feel like that was like his version of caffeine or coffee. Anyways, so they were sitting together, Rabbi Yochanan ben Arza, Rabbi Yossi ben Norai, they were sitting together, they were enjoying some wine. It even sounds like maybe like it was like wine that they would like dole out with a ladle. It sounds like a very interesting experience. They were having a pleasant, let's say, afternoon. Obviously talking and learning, of course. And somebody walked by, and they said, hey, can you top us off? Levasar derama lechasa, however, dun dun dun, after this fellow poured them wine, boom, dag nabbit. Turns out he was an Ovei Kochavim. Chad osar afilu bano v'chad shari afilu b'shtia. So now if they weren't talking and learning until now, which they probably were, or how about this? So now the focus of their discussions turned to now what? One of them felt that we can continue drinking, no problem. Mutter afilu b'shtia. However, the other opinion was osar afilu ba'ano. We can't even sell it to somebody else and say, hey, we didn't finish this. You want to buy the rest of our wine off of us? So one opinion is completely mutter. The other opinion is completely osar. Where am I? So those okay, fine. Okay. Charosa afilu ba'ano v'chad afilu b'shtia. Omer Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Says Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Man de osar shapir osar. Uman de shari shapir shari. Says Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi that they're both taka right. They're both right. The one who says completely osir, you can't even sell it, he's right. But guess what? The one who says completely mutter, you can even drink it, he's also right. Man de osar, the reason for the one who says completely osir is because we got to get into the psychology. Both of them are going to be getting into the psychology of this Ovid Kechavim who poured them wine. According to the video who says osir, the psychology is, he said, so they asked this guy, who turns out to be an Ovid Kechavim, can you pour us some wine? What does Ovid Kechavim say to himself? He says, well, these look like some pretty respectable rabbis. They're not drinking beer, they're drinking wine. And he says, these rabbis just asked me to pour them wine. What fools. And he goes and he pours them wine with the intention of Avodah Zarah. And therefore, it's osir afilu ba'ano. So Meimar Amr, the Ovid Kechavim, certainly says to himself, Salka daite, the Rabbanon, Kihane, Shichra Kashasu, what, you think these respectable rabbis are drinking beer? Elavade Aichamu, they're definitely drinking wine. Vinasche, so he intended for libations, and therefore it's osir even bano. There's kavonas nisuch, and it's osir even bano. Man the shari, however, the one who says, right, so that's to be pretty straightforward, right? Person was, although Rashi Tosfos get into a little bit, but Batsim, Bigadol, I think this we could say this is pretty straightforward, which is there was kavonas nisuch over here, and therefore it's osir afilu bano. Man the shari, Shapir Shari, we said though that also the one who says completely mutter is also correct, because Meimar Omer, he says Sagadaite dirabonon kihani chamra kashasu ve'amru lididi to ashkinon elavada shichra hu kashasu velo nasche. So the according to the one who says completely mutter is because his psychological angle on the situation is that, well, for sure what happened with this Ovid Kechavim is that he says, he stops for a second, he says, wait a second, these rabbis just asked me to pour them some of this beverage? Well, obviously they wouldn't be asking a goy to pour them wine. Obviously they're not going to drink wine of a goy that was touched by a goy. So he says, okay, obviously therefore this is beer. And therefore he's not thinking about nesach because he's assuming it's beer. Again, Mandashari, Shapir Shari, I'm reading that again. The one who says completely mutter, afilu b'shisia, Meimar Omer, is because the Ovid Kechavim says to himself, Salkadaite de Rabbanon Kiane, Chamra Kashasu V'amru Lididi to Ashkinon. What, you think that if these rabbis were drinking wine, they would ask me, a goy, to pour them wine? No way. Elavad Shichro, it must be that it is beer. Kashasu, that they're drinking, V'lo Nasche. And he did not have the intention of Nesech. And therefore, okay, so there was no intention of Nesech, and we're saying therefore it's mutar afilu b'shasiyah. But v'ha ka chazi. So first of all, why? This is weird. Why did he not know that it was wine? Why do you think it was? Can he just look at it and say, "Oh yeah, that's wine"? Well, Belelia, it was at night. Okay, but wouldn't he smell that it's wine? Well, it was new wine that didn't have a pungent smell. Okay, but still, why is it mutter b'shasiyah? Okay, so this is interesting. He's touching it with the ladle. Wow, Chevra, this is really important. This is really important for our classification of stuff. So the Gemara asks, well, but he's pulling it out with a ladle, right? He's doling it out with a ladle. And because he's doling it out with the ladle, it would be maga ovid kochavim. Pulling it out with the ladle is touching. So, okay, so sheesh. So yesterday when we had the whole thing with the lulav, right? Tosfos had pointed out, the Tosfos that ended up disagreeing with the lulav and saying that he touched it directly. So Tosfos had pointed out that according to the Girsa that had on yesterday's daf with Rav and the guy getting the lulav and he touched the wine, that he touched it by way of the lulav. So that perspective would assume that touching by way of a lulav is the same thing as touching directly with your hand. And we see over here that the Gemara is as well say that he's using a ladle, and we're saying, the Gemara literally says, Vaganoga be binatla, he's touching the wine via a ladle, and by doling out touching the wine via the ladle, we consider it as if he's touching the wine himself. So Tosfos actually says over here that actually he changes it to say that it's not that because he's using a ladle, it's considered like he touched the wine itself. There's actually a concern that he did actually touch the wine directly himself, and that's why it's maga ovikchavim shelo b'kavana. This is important because we're saying this was a complete fluke, right? Now we had said, at least according to Tosfos, literally that Tosfos ends with the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam on Zayin Amud Aleph, who says that maga ovikchavim al yedei kli shelo b'kavana is mutter, and yet over here we're saying that he's using the ladle, and we're saying it should be Osir. So Tosfos actually, if you go based on Tosfos, so he would have to change this. And again, this is why all this stuff is so tricky. We have so many different scenarios and getting all the details to align. So Tosfos would actually change this and say that he actually touched it directly with his hands, and therefore, okay, so in a situation where you touch it directly with your hands without kavana, as we saw by Rav with the Tinuk Ben Yomo, it would be Osir Bano. Osir B'Shisiya Mutter Bano. Right, where are we? So it should be Osir, at least B'Shisiya. So it's the Kamorik or Ruke Vavle Kochosh B'Kavan V'Chokosh B'Kavan L'Goz B'Yabon. No, well, it's talking about a scenario. So it was at night, it was new wine, he couldn't smell it, and he wasn't doling it out with a ladle, but rather it was in a vessel. And he was just pouring it from a vessel. So it's his koach, it's him pouring it, but it's not, he didn't touch it directly, it's in a vessel, and he's pouring from the vessel, which we're going to consider this his koach, right? It's his action, he's pouring it, but it was shelo b'kavana, right? He thought it was beer, it was complete fluke. And we say, right, so what do we say? So we say, Lotzircha de kamorik oruke is pouring it from a vessel, it's his koach, it's coming from him, he's the one pouring it, but it was a complete fluke. When you have a complete fluke, without any intent, when it's his koach, in this case where he's pouring from the vessel, with the complete fluke, and the rabbis don't make a gzera, and therefore it's mutter, even b'shasiya. Wow. Okay. Well, that's an important thing. So if you have an oved kocham who's pouring wine, but it's a complete fluke, so now it would be mutter afilu b'shasiya. Okay. New scenario. Okay. It's interesting. This whole sugya of like Yeh Nesech almost feels to me in some ways like the Tumah and Tara sugyas, where there's just like, it's hard to get like an actual mahalach, like an actual framework where things fit in, because there's just so many exceptions. There's just so many exceptions, right? Because if you touch it by way of like a vessel, whatever, right? If you're like measuring it, so we say that it's also b'shasiyah, but if you're pouring it, then it's mutzah b'shasiyah, and it's like hard to get like an actual like framework to just apply. And it feels like also Tumah and Tara, there's just so many exceptions, so many like just things you have to like memorize. Well, in this case it's mutter, in this case it's also okay. Anyways, scenario number 3 of the day. Bo mine Rabbi Asim Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Asi asked Rabbi Yochanan, Yain shem misocho ovid kochavim. Mao. Okay, what is the scenario where a ovid kochavim dilutes wine? So now, my understanding of this scenario, I'm actually not 100% sure that I'm right, but well, this is how I understand it though. Is basically an Oivik Chacham is pouring water into wine. So meaning a Yid has like a pitcher of wine now, or a cup of wine. So now, right, as we've learned, the way that they would drink wine is that it was a concentrate and you would dilute it with water. So in this case, the Oivik Chacham poured water into the wine of a Yid. I don't think that he touched the wine at all. I don't think that he's the one who mixed, who actually I don't think he used a spoon and mixed anything together. I think he literally just took water, which is not wine, it's just water, and poured it into to a Yid's wine. I think that is what we're talking about. So Ba'amine Reb Asim Reb Yochanan, so Reb Asas Reb Yochanan, Yayin, when it comes to wine, Shemisacha of Oivik Chachavim, that an Oivik Chachavim poured water, diluted the Yid's wine. I think he literally just poured water into it. Ma, what's halacha? Amalei. So first Reb Yochanan says, he gets caught up on the fact that Reb Asi used the word misacho. Deima mizago, mozgo. Why are you saying moscho? Right? Why are you saying moscho? Why don't you just say the normal word, which is mizago, to dilute? Right? We always use the word mozgin as hakos. So Amalei, so Reb Asi says, well, on a kedichsiv kamina, I'm using the same word as from the pasuk. Tovcha tivcha moschayenu. It says that this woman slaughters meat and dilutes wine. Amalei, to which Rabbi Yochanan gives an interesting answer, which is l'shon Torah le'atzma, l'shon chacham le'atzmo. Interesting. Separate the words of the Torah versus the words of the chacham. The Torah speaks one way, the chacham speak another way. Don't speak in halachic terms using biblical Hebrew. Interesting. Okay, fine. So what's the halacha when it comes to the Oivik Chacham pouring water into the wine of a Yid? Amalei Osir. So Rabbi Yochanan says Osir. However, why is it Osir? Mishum leich leich am nazira schor schor lechaim lo sikov. It's like we say to a Nazir, don't play with fire. Just get away from the vineyard. Don't even go into a vineyard. Don't play with fire. Just stay away. So I think the way I understand this is like, yeah, he's technically not doing anything wrong. What is he doing? He's pouring water into wine. So what? It's just water. But still, you're playing with fire. Once the Oivik Chacham is pouring water, he's going to maybe mix it together. He's going to maybe touch it, use it, whatever. So just stay away. And Rashi says that this would mean Aser b'shesiya, but it would still be mutar bano. We're not going to say because of this lech, right, of don't play with fire, therefore it's also afilu bano. We say it's also b'shesiya but mutar bano. Rabbi Yirmiyah ikla l'savta. Rabbi Yirmiyah visited a place called Savta Chazal Chamro. Demazga of the Chacham. He saw that of the Chacham were diluting wine over there. The Ishti Yisrael, and the Yidden were drinking it from him, from the Oivik Chacham. V'asr lehu, and he said that it's also Mishum leich leich amin nazir schor schor lecham lo sikor, for the same reason that we say to a Nazir be'etzim, don't play with fire, just stay away from vineyards. It Marnami was also stated on Rabbi Yochanan v'amil on Rabbi Asi Rabbi Yochanan yain shem zogo shamazgo Oivik Chachavim also Mishum leich leich amin nazir schor schor lecham lo sikor, that wine that's been diluted from Oivik Chachavim is also because of this concern of don't play with fire. Okay, so that was Daf Nun Ches of Masechta Avodah Zarah. And Daf Nun Ches, we continued in our mission to classify Yain Nesech. We had 3 scenarios. Scenario number 1 was intentionally touched with hand, and I didn't. Oh yeah, exactly. Right. Okay, fine. So we had this scenario where this Oivik Chacham went into the store of the Yidden, and there was wine in a bucket. He said, "Do you have wine?" They said, "No." He went and he intentionally touched with his hand. However, there was no intention of nisuch, so it was kavanas maga, not kavanas nisuch. He shaked his hand around in there, and we say they're completely asur. Asur b'shesiya, asur bano. That was scenario number 1. Scenario number 2. That was where Rabbi Yochanan ben Arza and Rabbi Yossi ben Norai were enjoying wine until they asked somebody to pour them a glass, and they realized that was an Oivik Chacham. One opinion was that completely asur. When Gentile plausibly poured with nesech intentions, right? That meaning, according to that opinion, the psychology from the Oved Chom's perspective was, these rabbis are definitely drinking wine, and I am going to pour them with the intention of nesech. Therefore, it's completely osur. But the other perspective is that the Oved Chom says, wait, the fact that they're asking me, a goy, to pour them wine means that clearly it's not wine. Well, to pour them means that clearly it's not wine. It must be beer. So it was a complete fluke, right? So we say completely mutter. If it's a complete fluke and a Gentile doesn't even know that he's pouring wine, right? So we say that he's pouring wine, complete fluke. And we're saying in that case, right, kocho shelo b'kavona is mutter. And finally, the third case was a Gentile should not dilute a Jew's wine as a precaution, right? Just like, right, we say to Nazir, don't play with fire. So also a Gentile should not dilute a Yid's wine as a precaution. Rashi says, osur to drink, mutter to benefit, right? Osur b'shisiya mutter bano. Tosfos, which I didn't mention, actually said that there's another opinion that says that it could even be osur bano as well. Okay, Cheved, that was Daf Nun Ches of Masechta Avodah Zarah. I hope you enjoyed. Cheers.